Alright, so welcome back. In our previous lesson, we looked at how we use elements as selectors in our CSS. If you haven't watched that video, you can go and check my previous video. Alright, so today's lesson, we are focusing on what we call IDs and classes. But before we do that, let's just do a recap of the syntax that we use in CSS. And so we said we can, pick elements using what we call selectors. And so these can be element selectors or ID selectors or class selectors, and then we have to declare our rules inside curly brackets. And as you guys can see in here, we have two declarations, and so each declaration is terminated by a semicolon. All right, as you guys can see, there's a semicolon here. It means this is the end of the first declaration, and then there's another semicolon. This shows that this is the end of the second declaration. All right, each declaration has got what we call a property and a value, which are separated by a colon. All right, so property, value, colon, property, value, colon. And if the property name is 2 words or 3 words, these words are separated by what we call a hyphen. So font hyphen size, background hyphen color, and that's how it's done. All right, and then the standard practice is we usually write our CSS in lowercase, but CSS is not case sensitive. All right, you have to keep that in mind, but the standard practice is that you have to write it in lowercase, just like this. All right, so if we go back to our text editor, now we want to focus on what IDs are and what classes are. And so I'm going to write IDs here. That's what we're going to be first looking at, and save this. And so IDs, just like in real life, these are unique identifiers. Okay, so they are used as unique identifiers of elements. They are not only used in CSS, they are also used in JavaScript, as you guys will see later on. All right, so I want to go to my index.html here, and what I'm going to do is I want to create another element here, an h2 element. And so I'm going to say h2, and I'll say this is a subheading. All right, just like that. And so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to right click. I want to run this, open this in the browser. And as you guys can see, we have our heading and we have our subheading here. It says this is a subheading. And so this is what we're going to target. And then we're going to give this an ID, and then we're going to style it using that particular ID. And so we're going to come back here. So the way we pass IDs into an element is we pass them as attributes, and so attributes are passed into the opening tag of an element. And so over here I'll say ID, and then I'm going to give it a value. So I'm going to say this is heading. Okay, this name is arbitrary, you can name it whatever you want. So the good thing is, if you hover over, like I always say, Visual Studio Code is so generous, it tells you what a particular attribute or an element is. Okay, so ID, define the unique identifier which must be unique in the whole document. So that means once we give this particular element this ID of heading, we mustn't give another element this similar IDs. And so now we have given this an ID. If we go back to the browser, nothing changes. It's just an identifier. However, everything changes when we go to our CSS, and we're going to select that particular element using its ID. And so IDs, you have to precede the name with a hash or the pound sign, and then we write the name of the ID. It was called heading. Let me go back and confirm the heading ID, and so that's it. And so now, and then we put curly brackets here. If I hover over element ID heading, this is an ID selector. Okay, hash heading, pound heading, ID selector. So anytime you see a pound and some name, that tells you that is an ID selector. All right, so what do we want to do with this particular element? Let's go back. This element, I want to change its color, and I also want to change its alignment. I want to align it to that end, and I also want to give it a background color here, maybe those three. All right, so I'm going to start with color. What color can I give this? Let's give it a blue color blue, and then property value, and then semicolon, right, divided by a colon. and then the next selector. I can put these in one line, but for your code to look cleaner, you have to put them on separate line. But I could go ahead and write another one, like text align here, align. I could we want to align it to the right, just like this. I could just do this, keep on writing as long as I put those semicolons at the end of each declaration. And so if I save this and go back, you can see those styles have been applied to this particular element with that ID. I specified that it should have a color of blue and an alignment to the right, and so that's what happened here. And we also mentioned about background color, right? We said we want to give this a background color, and let's give this a background color of aqua. This one, yeah. So save and go back. You can see now it has a background color, that one. And so this is a block level element. I hope you guys still remember, a block level element will occupy the whole width. Okay, it will always occupy the whole width, and so that's what's happening here. It's occupying the whole width because it's a block level element. All right, so I think we have done justice to IDs. This is easy and straightforward. Just remember that it has to be unique, because you're not only going to use it in CSS, you're also going to use it in JavaScript when you are writing your scripts. All right, let's look at classes. And so here I'm going to say classes. And so classes, like, what is a class? A class, to me, I would define it as a grouping of items with some kind of similarity. It's just a grouping of elements that have similar attributes. And so the same applies in CSS and HTML. When you group things together, you want maybe to apply similar styling to those particular elements. And so that's what I'm going to do. I want to target this H1. I'm going to give it a class, just like an ID. You pass it as an attribute in the opening tag. And so I'm going to give it a class of head, but I could also give it a class of heading, since IDs and classes are different, and it's okay. And I'm going to also target this button. I'm going to give it a class of, guess what, head here, because once you talk about class, the class has to be similar for them to have similar styling. And I'm going to create another button here, which of course I'm not going to include in the class. I just want to put it here so that you guys can see the difference. All right, so let's say I want to style this button and this heading with a similar style, and so I have to give them a class, a similar class. Okay, let's hover over and see what it says. Class. A space separated list of the classes of the element. Classes allow CSS and JavaScript to select, access specific elements via the class selectors. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to select these two using their class name. And so when you want to apply a class name in CSS, you use a period or a full stop or a dot, and you write the name afterwards, head. And then you can then pass in your rules in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a background color. This is for learning purposes. Let's say slate gray. Yeah, something of that sort. Yeah, let me save this, and the moment I go back, it's looking weird though, but you guys can actually see the difference. And so I selected two elements. I gave them a similar class, and so I just selected that particular class and I styled it. And so now this one has got a background of slate gray, and this button as well. This one has been untouched. It has got its default background color because I did not select that particular element. I did not pass that class. Let's say later on I decide, well, I want this also to have that similar background color, and so I would just come here and say class equals head, just like this, and that's it. And if I save this and go back to the browser, now you can see these two buttons have the same styling, the background color of slate gray. I hope it's making a lot of sense. If you guys feel like it's not making sense, leave your comments in the comment section. Otherwise, I want to thank you for your time. If you haven't subscribed, remember to subscribe, like the video, I appreciate your support. Hope to see you in our next video. For now, I'm out. Bye bye.